Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HFTP Hangout. I am Brittany Brewster, Membership Director, alongside Barbara Cimarero, Chapter Manager, and we are hosting today's HFTP Hangout, How Financial and Technology Professionals Build Trust. Natalie Doyle-Oldfield is our speaker, and perhaps you met her last year at High Tech Orlando or at the HFTP Annual Convention, as she attended both events and helped at the HFTP Academy area. She is an HFTP member, and Success Through Trust is a certified HFTP education provider, which is offered through the HFTP Academy. Her course, Becoming a Trusted Advisor, is eligible for 14 ethics credits for CHAE and CHTP certifications. Natalie is an author of The Power of Trust, How Top Companies Build, Manage, and Protect It, and president of Success Through Trust. She spent 25 years in the IT industry and the past 12 in hospitality before founding Success Through Trust. She's been named one of the world's top thought leaders in trust for 5 years in a row by Trust Across America. Other leaders who have been named include Howard Schultz, founder of CEO of Starbucks, and author Stephen Coboy. Natalie is recognized as one of Canada's most inspiring women business leaders and entrepreneurs. She's on a mission to help business professionals accelerate their careers by showing them how to build relationships of trust. Natalie's training programs are based on research and science conducted over 10 years and tested by thousands of individuals. A regular podcast guest and writer, she is a contributor to Forbes and featured in Economist Impact as a business trust expert. And with that, welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll here in a minute. But it's great to be here and lovely to see that we have about 50% of the people are from clubs, just under 30% are hoteliers, and that about 73% are people in the finance world. So great to know. One of the most important things that we all need to know when we're building trust is who we're talking to, what's important to them, and who they are. So really appreciate you taking this time to fill that out. Excited to be here today. And I know some of you are probably thinking, why trust? Like, why are we here? Well, trust is actually the most important question and the number one question we all have about everything. Yes, everything. Everything from who we meet, to what club we're going to go to what course we're going to take, to what profession we're going to take. It is the number one question. And most of us ask this question subconsciously. We don't go around saying, oh, I wonder if I trust them, do I trust them? But actually, we do ask this question subconsciously. We're always trying to figure out, do I trust? So this session, I'm hoping we can have a great conversation around how to build trust, why it's important. I'm going to share a couple of tips with you today on how to build relationships of trust, either with your colleagues or maybe with a member or with a guest or with a partner or someone in your industry, whichever is most important to you. And I'm going to share a few slides on the context of why is it important? Why trust anyway? So I'm going to flip back and forth between some slides. As Brittany mentioned, any questions you have, please put them in the chat. If I don't see your hand being raised, I've asked Barbara and Brittany to stop me, and I'll make sure that we get to all your questions. At the end of the session, I do have a slide for you with a QR code for you to download an ethics workbook if you're interested. I created this workbook for you and for HFTP members because I know that a number of you are interested in earning ethics credits. So today, this session has a few. So what I thought we would do is just really get started and jump right in and talk about why trust and why are we all striving to be trusted advisors? So the title of this session is, what is a trusted advisor and why are we striving to become trusted advisors? Well, there's really three big reasons why trust is so important today. With everything that's going on in the world, companies, clubs, hotels, teams are facing more scrutiny than ever before. People are skeptical. They're wondering, what are companies doing? Why are some companies trusted and others not? And you know, the reality is we have more access to information than ever before. So people are wondering, is it true what they're doing? Are they really as open and honest as they say they are? And this is one of the main drivers that is why people are focusing more on trust right now, because we are so much more apt to be skeptical, and we are craving transparency from companies. So this is one of the main reasons. And what I wanted to share with you is this is also driving behavior, customer behavior. We buy from companies that we trust. Here's some statistics to share with you. These are worldwide statistics, because I know that some of you are many of you are from the US, but many of you on this call are from other parts of the world. 80% of people worldwide are joining clubs, attending, going to hotels that they trust. We buy products and services from organizations we trust. 68% of us worldwide recommend a product or a service that we trust. And 54% of people worldwide pay more for products and services they trust. It's so important to the bottom line. And depending on where you live, these numbers go higher. I am from Canada, and I am dialing in, presenting to you today from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And here in Canada, the numbers are even higher. 81% of Canadians buy from companies they trust. So if you have clubs or properties in Canada, it's extremely important to be a trustworthy organization. The red lines show what happens when we don't trust. When we don't trust, 63% of us tell everybody we know. And I'm sure you've experienced this. If you ever go to a restaurant and the food isn't good, you always tell your neighbor. If they ask you, how was it? We're usually pretty quick to say, oh, the service wasn't great. Or I don't know, maybe they had a new chef. It wasn't that great. And 58% of us just refuse to buy another product or service from a company we don't trust. In the hospitality industry, whether you're a club or a hotel, referrals and recommendations are key. We all know, and I know 75% of the people on this call are in finance. Well, we all know it costs a lot more money to market and sell to a brand new customer than it does to maintain and keep a customer and have repeat customers and referrals. So I just want to point out, it's so important. And as I said, 68% of people worldwide recommend products and services that they trust. So before I move off this reason why trust is becoming so important, I really want to point out the ethics behind this, because as Brittany mentioned in the introduction, the course that I offer, not only the one with HFTP, but all of the courses we talk about ethics. And some people say, well, what does trust have to do with ethics? Well, one of the reasons that trust has become so important, and in my opinion, the issue for 2023, is because of the skepticism that people have, right? They're wondering why and if they should work with companies, buy from companies, attend company functions, go to hotels or clubs if people are ethical. So ethics and disingenuous on activity are becoming more and more the focal point. We just have to open up the newspaper to see what's going on. And every single day, whether you look at the news online or I guess in person, you see the word ethics and or trust on the front page. It doesn't matter if you live in Florida, if you're in South Jersey, if you're in Halifax or Austin. Ethical behavior is at the heart of building a trusting relationship. So this is a QR code that I mentioned. We created a special workbook for you if you're interested. This code will take you to a page on my website. You fill out the form and we will send you the 24 page workbook on ethics. So that's one reason the companies are facing greater scrutiny. Number two reason that trust is becoming so important is that the labor market worldwide, and especially in North America, has changed. And the employees' expectations and employee engagement has changed. At several HFTP events, including High Tech and the annual convention that Brittany mentioned that I was at, this is a topic. In fact, at the annual convention, we had one of the final speakers was an economist who was talking about the labor market in the US. And I know every hospitality company I work with, whether it's a club or provider to a club or hotel, this is one of the biggest issues we have, is how do we keep and retain our people? Well, trust is critical to that. It can be the glue for you to retain employees. It's also a way to attract employees. If you're a trusted organization and everybody knows you have a culture that's trusted and people are comfortable and they know that everybody in that organization's got their back, they want to work for you. So not only is it a retention strategy, but it's an engagement strategy to keep the people engaged. There was a very large study done several years ago in the US by Google. And what Google found after studying 186 teams is that the most important ingredient and the strongest predictor of a high-performing team is having a culture that's based on trust. So if we know this, then why wouldn't we focus on trust more? Trust is so critical to our success, and high-performance companies know this. And I suspect that, I see we have 42 participants on this call this afternoon. You all know this. It's always the folks that know that trust is a competitive advantage that are ones that I'm talking to. The other ones that are participating in conversations and participating in different programs. It truly is the glue. We have a few polls, so you saw one. We have another poll that I just love to ask for fun. And I think I'm just going to remind everyone here that your answers are all anonymous, okay? So no one's name's going to be up here. So I would encourage you to answer the following question. How many of you, I'm going to launch this, have a colleague that you can trust? Perfect. Seeing 100%, 100%. Okay. You're quick. That's great. We all need and one person doesn't. We all need colleagues we can trust. Okay. I'm going to end this and I'm going to share the results. I guess I'm sharing them out loud before you even see them. Okay. So 97% of us have a colleague we can trust and 3% don't. That doesn't feel good to be in an environment does it, that you don't have anyone you can trust? Okay, here's another question for you. How many of you have a colleague in your office, in your organization, in your club, hotel, that you do not trust? Remember, it's anonymous. No one's going to know. Only I'm seeing the results come in. I'm going to end this here in a second. So 12%, only 12% have a colleague that they don't trust. And 84% of you, 88% of you have a colleague you don't trust. Imagine if you could trust all of your colleagues. What would it be like to work with this person that you don't trust now? What would it be like to have a relationship of trust with them? How would that change your world? Imagine how much more comfortable it would be, how much easier the conversations would be. Trust can change everything. And it's a skill. It's a leadership skill. We can develop it, we can learn, and we can cultivate it. We can practice it. It's like a muscle. It's like, I often tell people, it's like going to the gym. You can get stronger and stronger. You can become more and more trustworthy. You can learn how to build relationships of trust. Even those really difficult people that are very challenging in your organization. And we all have them. Every single organization has them. We all have them. This is critical to address the labor market, and it's critical to address the changing employee expectations, whether you manage people or not. And the reality is 88% of us have a colleague we don't trust. Here's another statistic. 58% of people worldwide trust a complete stranger more than they trust their boss. This was quoted in Harvard Business Review a couple of years ago. It's an issue. This is why it's becoming more and more important. The third reason that trust is becoming so important is that customer and guest expectations and member expectations for the majority of you who are with clubs have changed. In the last 3 years, with the pandemic, people have felt, and some do still feel, very isolated. That's a trend. We know this. We're reading about this all the time. And many of our organizations have a lot of mental health, people with mental health issues. That combined with a guest or a customer's need, desire, and expectation of personalization, and then layered on top of that, privacy issues and cybersecurity issues and AI issues, all come back to trust. At the end of the day, every guest, every employee, every member is wondering, can I trust? And most of us, like I said, ask this subconsciously. A lot of organizations are looking at it in terms of guest experience or customer experience. Our customer experience is based on a foundation of trust. First, we decide to trust, then we decide on whether or not we're going to open up and experience an organization. So you see, there are several reasons why trust is important. And one of the questions that people often ask me is, well, okay, so why is it important? Which is why I said, these are the 3 reasons. We're facing more scrutiny, the labor market and employee expectations are changing, and the customer and the guest experience and expectations are changing. So before we get too much further, I would like to define, what does trust mean? Because it's a big word. And I really focus on, as mentioned in the intro, to being as practical as possible. So what does it mean to you? What are some words? Maybe you could put them in the chat for us. What does trust mean to you? Dependability, yes. Integrity, doing what they say they're going to do. Yes, that's so important. Honesty, loyalty, reliance, absolutely. In fact, reliability in all the research that I did came out as the #1 characteristic of a trustworthy person and a trustworthy organization. Integrity, ethical. Comfortable, yeah, it means comfortable. When we trust someone, we are comfortable that they're going to do the right thing. Honest, following through, 100%. Honest, respect, do what you say you're going to do, and doing the right thing. Someone that I know is going to give me an honest answer. Yes, we trust people who are going to give us an honest answer. So trust is all of these things. The Oxford Dictionary or the Webster's Dictionary or whatever you look at, the Merriam-Webster online, will include the following. Trust is like a faith or belief that someone or something is going to do the right thing for me in the future. If I'm a customer or I'm a guest or if I'm a member, what trust means to me is I'm going to get the same experience as another member. I'm going to get the same price as another guest. I'm going to get the same service. If you say it really takes 10 steps to get something done, then it really means 10 steps. It's about all of these things that you're saying. When I define trust and people ask me, okay, well, how do you build trust? Really, at a high level, there are 3 components. And as mentioned in the introduction, the programs that I offer and the frameworks that I've created are all based on science and evidence, which means they've been tested with thousands of people, they're reliable and they're valid. And when you apply these frameworks and you apply these principles to each and every interaction, you get higher trust. So what it all comes down to are 3 components. So I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, because I love being interactive, if you're able to turn your cameras on, and if you're able to put your hands together like a triangle. So I can see some, I can't see everyone. Okay, awesome, thank you. Thank you for turning your camera on, Colin, Kristen, Brett, awesome, thank you. I can see you. So there are 3 sides to a triangle. My son, who's an engineer, would say this is an isosceles triangle because they're all the same size. Yes, there are 3 sides. And with a triangle, you have to have all 3 sides for it to stand up. There are 3 fundamental components to build, strengthen, and protect a relationship of trust. Side 1, communication. 2, service. And at the base is behavior. You see, because trust is all about principled behavior at the end of the day. Trust, these 3 components, communication that's clear, consistent, and honest. Behavior that's reliable, ethical, has integrity, is focused on the motives and the other person's interests. Behavior that acts in the other person's best interests. So the guest's best interest, your community's best interest, the employee's best interest, whoever the stakeholders are in your organization. And then the third side is service. Service that's empathetic, that's sincere, that is compassionate, and is authentic. You must have all three sides for trust to be present. You can't expect to be trusted with poor behavior, regardless of how well you communicate, right? It just doesn't work. It's going to fall down. And another saying that I often use is that you can't, if you're in a trust crisis, you can't communicate your way out of a crisis. You have to walk the talk. So that at a high level is what trust is all about. And you know, because you've all experienced people that you trust, people that you don't trust. And so what I would love to do is open it up to see if there's any questions. I do have the chat, but I don't see any questions here. But before I share a few tips, I'd love to see if there's any questions, any very specific things that you'd like to talk about today.
Natalie, would it be okay if they ask you the question directly, like
Yeah,
by
sure.
unmuting their
Yeah.
mic, or they can also
Absolutely.
just put it in the chat, whichever way they
You
feel
can
most
either
comfortable.
or. Yep.
Okay. So feel free to unmute if you have a question. I'm looking. Or
So here's the good thing is I could talk all day about this topic of trust. So if there's no questions, that's okay. I did prepare a couple of tips to share with you to build trust. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. Is that?
let's see, Natalie. I do see one question, Natalie.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
it's from Colin, and
Okay.
he says, "What's the impact of greenwashing on trust?"
Okay, Colin, is this Colin Bidwell with your camera on? Thank you. Okay, what do you mean greenwashing?
Gosh, that's a big question here. I'm checking the time, so we haven't got too much left. Gosh, greenwashing. It's effectively, it's the misrepresentation of how ethical and sustainable you are, basically, compared to, I guess, popular opinion, because there's no definitive definition of what sustainable is, basically, and everyone's got their own definition. So it's a big question, as I know that people are really wrestling with it. But
Yeah.
I must throw it out there, basically, because you've asked a question, so I put one on the table.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you know what? I love your question. I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So the impact on trust. Well, I believe and I feel like that's a trust buster, because if anyone is exaggerating or overstating what they're doing, that destroys trust. We all want to work with, buy from, deal with organizations and people that are open and honest and transparent. And when we exaggerate or stretch the truth, or maybe not share every single thing that we're doing to, help with sustainability, or stretch it in any way, people will find out. It doesn't take long. It's 2023. People find out very quickly because, as I mentioned, we have so much access to information. So I would say how that affects trust is it destroys trust, because we all know what it's like to find out that someone misrepresented themselves or stretched the truth. Then our inside voice says, what else are they exaggerating? What else aren't they telling us? Or what else are they saying they do, but they really don't do?
And then Natalie, there was a couple other questions coming in. I guess Selena has maybe the second part of that is, okay, if we impacted that trust, how do we
Yes.
rebuild it?
Well, so that's tough. So we can rebuild trust, Selena. So Selena, are you with a club or a hotel or a provider? Says, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to try to give you an example. You're with a hotel. Okay. So I would say to all of us, you know, we all want to strive always to be as trustworthy as we can be. And you all outline the characteristics of a trustworthy person when you put those words in the chat. And when we focus on how we communicate, how we behave, and how we serve, we do build trust. Sometimes we break the trust. It can be something as little as, to us, as little as saying someone's name wrong. It could be missing a deadline. It could be telling a guest that we have a room available for them, and then they come to your hotel and you don't have the room available that you promised them. It could be that they ask for, you know, the club floor and there's no bottled water in their room. Everybody's different and we all have a different continuum. How I would recommend, depending on what you did and the severity of how the trust was broken, is start with empathy. Start with listening to the person, really understanding from their point of view what it's like to be in their situation. So go right to the other person. I have so I have all these little props on my desk because I have a 6-week program that's live like this on Zoom, interactive, where we go through the step-by-step process of how to learn how to build trust. And we talk about rebuilding trust. And I have this onion on my desk because when we talk about empathy, I always say, okay, we think it might look like this. But actually, when we peel the onion back, we realize that maybe how what we did affected someone in a different way. So to rebuild trust, step number 1 is to listen, to truly understand the other person's situation. And then what I would say, depending on, again, on the severity of it, is to put ourselves in their shoes and be as kind, as compassionate as we can be. And if you're the kind of hotel that your frontline people are empowered to fix it for the customer, I would say fix it, the problem, in a way that you are proud of, in a way that makes you feel good. Because at the end of the day, we all want our problem or our issue fixed. So it starts with listening and empathy. And, you know, Selena, if you would like, if you have a very specific challenge you're thinking about or considering in your mind, I would encourage you to reach out to me. And I mean that sincerely. Reach out to me by LinkedIn, by email, go to my website, my phone number's up there, and I am open to a call to discuss it further. Any other questions?
There was, because I skipped over one.
Okay.
It's from Brent Connor.
Okay.
And Brent, do you want to ask that one directly or do you want me to? I'll go ahead. So how do optics,
Oh,
meaning how
Brett,
do,
from Pebble Beach, Brett.
yeah?
Okay.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, how do optics, how do people / companies, how people or / companies are perceived? Now, how does
Yeah.
that impact trust?
Okay. Great question. It's, I don't really know how to answer this in an articulate way, So what I'm going to say is reputation is about past performance. Trust is a predictor of future success. So it goes hand in hand. So it's first we decide to trust, then we decide on everything else. So to give you an example, so I know, Brett, you're with a hotel, right?
Yep.
So if I'm considering, am I going to go to this hotel? Well, I wouldn't, okay, do this, but my husband would read all the reviews about the hotel. Okay, I would just say, oh, I know Brett Connor works there. It's probably a great place to be. I'm going to go there. That's actually how I think. Okay, because there's what's called a trust transference. Because we say we trust a company, we trust a hotel, but it's actually hotels and companies are made up of people. So you all are extremely important to your brands. So how I perceive everybody that works at your hotel is extremely important. However, we have all this access to information, and millennials and people that are more don't know people in this industry, as an example, they're wondering, does this hotel have a social conscience? What are they doing in the community? What do they say online about the reviews? How clean is it? And all of these things impact trust. At the heart of it, we decide to trust, as I mentioned, based on how we communicate, how we behave, and how we serve. However, communication's a big thing. Everything we do communicates a message. So the flowers out front communicate a message. The flower arrangements at the front desk communicate a message. The frontline people, though, are really the most critical, what I call trust risk point to all of your hotels and clubs. It's the frontline people, because that's where we are making our decision. And what's really exciting and kind of scary is that we decide to trust someone based on their facial expressions in 33 milliseconds. So your people on the front lines who are answering the phones, taking the reservation, booking people in, walking down the halls, doing the housekeeping, your guest is deciding whether or not to trust based in 33 milliseconds of their interaction with you. I hope I kind of answered your question, Brett. Love to, if you have something more specific, I'm happy to dive in as deep as you'd like.
That's good. Thank you.
Really, in many ways, for all of this, we can have the best technology in place. And as some of you know, I spent 25 years in the technology industry, about 15 years in the technology industry specific to hotels and clubs. So we can have the best technology, we can have all the right tools, we can have all the right systems and processes in place. But the most critical trust risk point for every single organization in the hospitality industry, in every industry, is the people. Because really, at the end of the day, we are buying from people in this industry. It really comes down to the people, how they communicate, how they behave, and how they serve. I do see another. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Not another question. Okay. Any other questions? So I don't see a hand up. I'm going to share a couple of tips. And again, if a question comes up, please ask and I will stop and we'll come back. So my tip number one to build trust is to be curious, to listen carefully with empathy and compassion, which is principle number one of my trust building framework, and to really be curious. When we're curious, and let's just talk about colleagues, right? Because I know that for many of you, it's challenging to recruit and retain people on your teams, whether your team is a finance team, which I know 73% of you are, or an IT team, is to really be curious and get to know your colleagues. When we focus on really, truly understanding their situation, we connect with them, right? And build stronger relationships of trust. So I would say this is a very important action item for all of us this year, is to really be curious, get to know your colleagues, listen to them, show them compassion. There's a lot of room at work for compassion. And there's a lot of room at work for empathy, really understanding the other person's situation. And when we truly understand, we know how much we can help them or what's important to them, which is key. When we're building a relationship of trust with someone, we've got to know what's important to them. I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where you're on a team with people and someone comes in every Monday morning and they just talk about the football game all morning long. And the meeting is like 45 minutes. And for 40 minutes, they're talking about the game the day before. Has that ever happened to anybody? I see some smiles. I can't see that many hands, but it's happened. Well, that's great if everybody in the room likes football, but it's not good if that one person who's just talking about it is the only one in the room that knows anything about football or has any interest about football. So be curious and open-minded and involve the people that you're talking to in discussions that affect them. So that's tip number one. My second tip that I wanted to share with you today, we talked a little bit about already, and that's about being transparent. Transparency means sharing information that affects a customer or a colleague. It means not intentionally leaving things out. And I wanted to share with you, now that we know that we have a lot of clubs on the call, a practical example of how a club can be transparent. So I mentioned I'm from a relatively small city, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. So is there anyone on this call from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada? No, I don't see it. Okay. So I know this is being recorded, so I'll try to be careful. But what I'd like to share is the story of what's happening in the golf club near where I live and in my community. It's a wonderful club. It's been around for a long time. As some of you know who have met me before, I talk about my kids a lot. So Brett knows this, Jonathan knows this. I have two children. Barbara knows this, and Brittany, and they're both golfers and they love to golf. My son is 23 years old and he's been golfing for probably 15 years now. And a couple of years ago when he was in university, he decided to go from a full member to a social membership because he was doing co-op and couldn't golf that much. And where I live, we have quite a short season. It's not like Florida where, everyone's going there to golf now. Like, we're covered in snow now. So all this to say, fast forward, then we had COVID and everybody decided, including myself, that they wanted to golf more. And so what happened is that the golf club was not open and honest and transparent with its members with respect to the number of tee times. And then what they said is we're not allowing social members to golf anymore because, of course, they had so many people wanting to golf. Now that people are starting to golf a little less, in my community anyway, there's a huge number of people on the waiting list to get into the club. And they're not being open and honest and transparent about where you are on the waiting list. So my son is not happy and he wants to golf. And now he works full time and he has weekends and evenings off. Many of his friends are stopping their social memberships, leaving the club to join another club. And they're leaving because the club is not being transparent. None of us like to hear bad news, but we all want the truth. Whether it's good or bad, we all just want the truth. So I share that example with you because I know your clubs are probably experiencing several of the same types of issues. Keep in mind that customers are paying more attention. They want accountability and they want transparency and they want people with social conscience. So to the question you asked earlier, Colin, they're not interested in greenwashing. They want to know the truth. I have a guide, as I mentioned, for you, and I'm just going to pull this up because I know it's about 10 to the hour, and some of you may need to drop off. If you're interested in this ethics guide workbook, you just fill out the form and we will send you the guide. And it's really, it's a companion guide to a lot of things that we talk about in the Becoming a Trusted Advisor course, the course that's for HFTP. The HFTP course is called Becoming a Trusted Advisor. There's a special module for you as HFTP members where we do talk about ethics, but the majority of the course is around building trust. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a step-by-step process. So we go through some of the principles we talked about. It's online. And there are exercises, there's a workbook that's part of it. And if you're interested in any information about that, it's like I mentioned to Selena, please reach out. I'm happy to help and answer any questions that I can for you. Any other questions? I see another question about technology. Oh, maybe it's not a question. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Colin. So one thing I would mention about technology is that I think that a number of guests are going to be asking more and more, if they aren't already, about your cybersecurity policies and your privacy policies. I know that in Europe, hoteliers that I speak with, that they have a lot of guests that want to know that. And, you know, in the olden days, some of you may remember that you had to give your passport at the front desk of a hotel because they didn't have a system. I was at a hotel last summer, I guess. And I asked the person at the front desk and they said about half the guests will not do that anymore. So I think with technology, it can drive trust, but I think it can also, if not managed properly, can destroy some trust and, you know, chip away at it.
Awesome. Well, with that, if you guys have any other questions, go ahead and add those to the chat. I'm just going to kind of say a last few things to wrap up. Of course, thank you, Natalie, for joining. We will be offering 2 webinars coming up. We have one called Show Some TLC for the close. It'll be offering 1.2 CPE for accounting, and the other is In This Together, Becoming a Team of Retention Champions. And that will offer 1.2 CPEs for personal and human resources. Registration is open for both of those webinars on our website. The CPE certificates will be emailed to those who participated in today's polling questions. Look for that email later this week, and please keep a copy of the email as all CPEs are self-reported. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the Hangout. Again, this will be recorded, so you can go back to it. Like Natalie said, go ahead and reach out to her if you do have any other questions. So thank you all for participating, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And I'm happy to stay on for if anyone wants to ask any questions one-on-one. I'm here for as long as you have questions. Thank you all for your questions. Great discussion.
Getting a lot of thank you, Natalie's.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
That is nice. Yes. Yes. I've also noticed a
Jill
lot.
and Colin, thank you for having your cameras on. I really appreciate it.
Very good. I just wondered, I mean, this is an interesting subject area, isn't it, basically? I mean, having sort of attended a few of the Hangouts throughout the pandemic, etc., a lot of it has been in specific technology, potentially in finance topics as well, as you would expect. So to see this one around, I guess the softer sides is quite a refreshing change. I don't know if there's any commentary that HFTP can offer that, basically, as to, I mean, it's a great subject to have. It's essential for business. So why now, basically? And I guess yeah, why and why now, I guess, is an interesting question. I don't know if there's any view on that at all to share.
Colin, so you're asking, like, why now? Are we offering a Hangout on trust?
No.
Or
Well,
why is trust now such a
yeah. So why
issue?
the Hangout and trust now, given that a lot of the other Hangouts have been on, I guess, the technical side of things? So what's the leading technologies, emerging technologies, financial practices, etc., i.e. the technical side, and yet now we have a trust thing, which is great, obviously great attendance. I just wondered kind of why is there any thinking behind putting that sort of a psychological type of subject in, which is required for everyone, sort of non-technical side of things. So it's great to see. I just wondered if there's any sort of, is that characterize any sort of different thinking at all, psychology around the organization?
Inside HFTP last year, we started exploring topics in leadership. And I guess you would say, like, the softer side instead of the technology side, the accounting side. We wanted to, we recognize that our HFTP members were also very interested in these topics. So, and then Natalie is works very closely with Robin Bogdan on our HFTP Academy. And inside that, with our certification program, and Natalie is a trusted advisor, or trusted educational advisor, program content. So it just all it was a natural fit for us.
Yeah. Good to
do
see
this. So yes, so it is something that is HFTP is
I know,
resonating with.
Because there's a debate, isn't it, basically around high tech, etc., clashing with another industry conference, etc. So I just wondered, sort of branching out basically and broadening the value proposition, which potentially adds, I guess, the value proposition, as I say, given that the market is put another event.
That's a different way of looking at it. Yeah, because I'm looking at it from, like, the leadership, from the member side, what other offerings can we have, but from an organization, that's an interesting perception.
It's a good question, Colin. And so I would echo what Barbara mentioned, and that is that it is a leadership skill, and more and more it is being recognized as one of the most critical skills leaders can have, is the ability to develop, cultivate, and protect relationships of trust. And in the hospitality industry, let's face it, we all want to have relationships that are based on trust, not transactional. because we want our guests to have a great experience and to come back. And so whether you're in IT or in finance, and depending on what your role is, your ability to build relationships of trust there is a direct impact to how quickly you rise in an organization from a career standpoint. There's a direct impact on people's staying with a team or joining a team. So to Barbara's point, it is a leadership skill, and HFTP not only provides technical skills, but this is, in my opinion, a critical technical skill, often seen as a soft skill, but it's definitely a leadership imperative.
Absolutely. I mean, from a workforce perspective, people want purpose, basically, don't they? Retention, talent attraction, all that sort of stuff. The measures of success is not just we employ people, it's just like how are we actually contributing to planetary sustainability, basically, given that's a whole piece around D&I, George Floyd, BLM, all that sort of stuff. People actually want to work for a purpose. And
with companies that have social conscience as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Very good. Sorry, I'm hogging the microphone, so I'll stand down.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, great question. Really, really great question.